If you've been around here for a while, you know I love learning in all its form. Synthetic, biological, metaphysical, all of it. I also know that there's a lot of doom these days about like what even is the point of learning if like AI can do so much. I really think that like learning is one of the most beautiful capability of humans, and it's something that should be understood on a personal level and honed throughout life. So I decided to get on the ground and explore how technical people from different backgrounds are learning in the current AI era that we're in, and how they see the usage of such a technology to advance their own understanding. To do so, I brought two of my good friends with literally completely opposite background to discuss it in like a 2-hour long interview. I don't think I could have taken people with more different background than that. So the first one is Ludwig, which if you're around the tech Twitter area, you might know him for his very no bullshit commentary on the often overhyped zeitgeist. Ludwig is a very interesting case since he dropped out at 15, taught himself to code as a kid, like building his own computer kind of stuff, and now work on widely abstract math as a researcher of sort. Kind of like a hustling tech kid genius situation over there. And then we have Nikolai, who went through the full academic route, a bit like me. He has been doing physics in his bachelor, then neuroengineering at the Swiss Federal Technology Institute of Lausanne, EPFL, and has been published in Neurops. Actually, I didn't fight a lot with Nikolai in the way he thinks about learning in general in academia. So it's a slight balance. Both are great guys to follow on Twitter, by the way. You should do it. I highly recommend. In the discussion, we're going to get into whether formal education is even worth it anymore, how you should decide what to learn when like nobody is giving you like a syllabus or a curriculum, whether putting 10,000 hours into mastering something still pays off in like this LM AI era, and what's suddenly worth knowing that was useless like a few years ago. Then we're gonna go deep into a subject that I really like, which is the difference between biological versus machine intelligence, and why I like spoiler, I think that living cells clearly outclass anything we've built synthetically. And finally, we'll close on a proper discussion about like all the FOMO that a lot of youngsters out there in tech have at the moment and what to do about it. It's a long one and we go off in tangent, but there are a lot of like learning gems in there, in my, again, humble opinion. So grab like 2 liters of whatever you're drinking and like let's get into it.
I went back to my home country when I was like 10, and I kind of went into social services by like 11, so I wasn't going to school very much. By 15 I dropped out. My mom was very accommodating. I think she had like a high degree of trust in me, and also I was not like a very good kid, and so there was not a lot of other options, I think, so she was okay with me dropping out. And I spent a year in homeschooling. I kind of like speed ran all the years. Just I could have like the rest of the year free. I had started programming at around like 10 and a half UA. So I started, I basically got a, is that too much background, by the way? Just let me know.
No, man, just go. Like, this is so interesting. Keep it up, man. I have 6 questions already lined up.
But yeah, so I started programming really young. You know, I think one thing that's important is when people hear that, they think this is like some kind of like, you know, special thing. But I was profoundly incompetent. Like I wasn't a very talented kid. I had no specific mathematical inclination or capacity for logic or anything like that.
Right.
I liked video games like every other kid. I wanted to make some video games. You know, I ended up like building this like kind of secondhand computer with my aunts. Literally like just getting like spare parts from like you know, secondhand shops and stuff like that. We built a computer, and I just wanted to like program on it. So I got into like C++ and then C, which was like a Jesus, man, the entry point. But I basically followed tutorials, you know, for years. That's what I did. I followed tutorials. Back in the day, there was not a lot of like, you know, YouTube and crazy like easy things. So it was just like we go on the website, follow the tutorial. I was not very interested in how it worked internally. You know, I had no interest in compilers or programming language theory or anything like that. I thought it was cool. You could like invoke things on the computer by like writing things. But by 13, 14, I was like, okay, well, it would be cool if I was a video game developer. And I emailed at the time a 3DS game studio in Paris that had one successful 3DS game. And I asked them if I could intern and like, you know, how's it going? And so I could put in touch with that team. And basically what I sensed is that everybody was broke, wasn't making any money, and it looked like it sucked. So I was like, okay,
It's brutal.
I gotta make some money to get out of here. So I pivoted to web development, you know, just pretty typical web development, front end and like, you know, PHP in the back end and just like some good, you know, relational databases. And that's how I got my first job. You know, before I dropped out, my mom used to like, basically like was employed by my employer instead of me. And I was working on this like little like, game radio website, it was before podcasts and stuff like that. So anyway, and from there, after dropping out, I basically I just kept taking little jobs. I did a lot of like front-end integration. I actually, when I was a kid, I lived on this big avenue, and I worked in every shop, and I basically offered to make free websites. I made like, I don't know, 10, 15 free websites, and then I started charging for them. And so I racked up money over time.
Jesus.
And at 18, I spent all that money to go to Auckland, New Zealand, to be a contractor, where I worked for Uber and a couple other like contracting things that paid me an infinite amount of money compared to what I was used to. And then I that's how I got started and kind of like went on. So that's.
But like, where the hell did this drive for like just the first like building a computer and then like just like using it came from? Like anybody in your family, or you saw something, or like you were just curious?
Yeah, nobody in my family. I mean, my aunt, when I was a kid and we would go back to France, she used to, we had a Minitel. I don't know if you know, those are like classic 90s kind of like French computers. Strange machines. They're worth looking up. But she showed me like a few like basic things in, like looping things and like just printing things on the screen. And I thought that was kind of neat, I guess. But really, I think for me, the drive mostly came through the fact that it looked at the time like, this is, I'm 31 going on 32. So it's going to be, it was like mid 2000s or something, like I could tell that, shout out Minitels.
It looked cool though. It looked really cool.
Cool, yeah. Kind of looked like these cyber decks people are interested in. They leave compact. But yeah, no, I think the drive was just, I wanted to get out. I didn't have many options. I did a lot of stupid things when I was a kid to make money. I was making money in different ways. And I just wanted to get out of where I was living. Yeah. And I thought, school is not going very well. And I'm having all these troubles. And when I'm at home, especially I have all this time, if I don't have to go to school all the time, then I have all this time. I can spend that time to do things I enjoy. And it turns out like people think it's some kind of like magical thing that they would give me money for. And then I just optimized to make, just not a lot of money, but just enough to get up. Yeah. So that would drive me like, yeah, it was pretty selfish and not very grand, I think. I did love computers and stuff like that, just not enough. My love for computers or like, computer science and stuff like that, I think like materialized much later on. Like, I think I had no space to love things very nicely in a romantic way when I was a kid. Yeah.
No, but like that's pretty cool. I kind of, I don't know. I resonate a bit with like this drive of getting the fuck out of whatever situation you're in. Yeah, I was in this treadmill from like more like 17 until like 2 years ago, I would say. I was just like grinding it out and trying to getting like whatever I wanted, and I realized I could just try to do it. Right, dude, this is awesome. This is fucking nice. Lazarz, what's your actual name? Because I don't know your name.
You mean how to say the nickname, or was the actual?
Well, no, your name, like completely.
Mikolai.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so I don't really have this whole picture of me painted like Ludwig has. Like Ludwig is very good with like this whole story thingy. I didn't really have that much of computer background before I was like 18, 19, before like high school. I did a lot of different things, very different things. Like I played video games like semi-professionally. I shoutcasted tournaments. I played volleyball semi-professionally as well, like growing up. So there's a lot of very, very different things. I was also trying to do like game, like news writing, stuff like this, like esports covering stuff when I was like 12 or 14. It never really kind of worked because, back then, like it was more than 10 years ago. So back then it was all kind of exploitative. Like these people, they were trying to build something, but they also were using people to write for them. They didn't really have any money, so they didn't have any money to pay you. This didn't really work out. But then when I actually started programming in high school, I think I pretty clearly and fast saw that this is kind of what I want to do. And it was about when neural networks and machine learning was a little blowing out. It wasn't like really blowing out like now, right? It's a completely different thing, but you could already see that it's picking up a little steam, that there is some breakthroughs here and there. So I had it in the back of my mind. And then I always knew I want to do studies, like at least the bachelor, right? So I started my physics bachelor, It was nice. It was a lot of math. It was kind of what I wanted to do, but not completely. Like, I think I understood that I'm not really cut for this. Like, there was this kids, sitting
Why not?
in the front of the class and understanding of all of the material very fast, or even before the lecture, and like getting it, acing the exams. And I'm not really that kid, Like, I need to bang my head against the wall until it somehow gets there. Then I write the exam. I know the stuff. But then 2 months later, like, you can ask me any question and there is nothing. there is completely zero. There's only this stuff that I do currently. Then this kind of love for machine learning came back, and I saw a lecture from one of the EPFL's professor at my university. And I was about to start my master's at the same university that I did my bachelor at. And I was like, why not apply to EPFL? Maybe just go there, see a little bit of the world, meet some new people. And thankfully, they had neuroengineering, which was kind of the thing that I was doing back on my bachelor, because the bachelor was physics, but it was like physics plus neuroscience. Mm-hmm. So neuroengineering seemed perfect. I applied. I somehow got it. Like, to this day, I have zero idea why they picked me. Like, the moment that I saw the mail was like, wow, like, I completely did not expect this. And I think it kind of changed the trajectory of my life when I got there. It's kind of hard to explain to people that didn't go through this path, but it's not that university really like teaches you all these great things, or like it just enables you,
True.
You have access, like you can just reach for something and it's there if you want it.
Yes.
So in that sense, I extremely appreciate it.
Your background is actually very similar to mine, right? Except I was a kid that was in front, right? I understood everything, but like the way I understood it is like, to be honest, not any much smarter than like anybody. It's just that like I really like the shit I'm learning, and I know that like when you're like with the teacher and stuff, it's not there. Like it's not there that you're gonna understand it, right? So I usually like there was 2 track. There's the thing that you have to learn, and then thing that you're assessed on, and these 2 things are completely different. I remember one time I aced completely like a very difficult math class, right? To be real honest, guys, I didn't understand much, right? I was just like I understood it in my bone, but I was not able to explain it, right? And I drilled so much question that it made it like the chances that I would have it wrong are like next to 0. It's impossible. I saw all of the possible variation for this shit. I was pattern matching the thing like crazy, and then like doing the thing. And like honestly, like my background is just I love learning, right? That's kind of my thing. So neuroscience, love this shit. And then machine learning, it makes sense because it's formalized learning, right? Programming, I love it because it's like also like formalized problem solving. And like what I realize is like the true learning, understanding of the thing is you kind of have to do something with it. Otherwise, like it's like next to useless. Like you ace this class, fantastic. But like if you were to do anything with it, you would be a complete failure. And I did that with like a molecular biology stuff. I had no background in it, right? And then I had some class that was like starting to teach that, and I was kind of good on like the fact stuff. And then I went into a molecular biology lab with like no experience whatsoever. To be honest, I think I costed this lab so much money. I was wasting shit. My experiment never worked. And then again, the only reason I was able to kind of get published over there is I just kept bashing my head, right? Like that's kind of the only true way to like really know something, right? And then like it's more now in the movement of you like being in motion than you just sitting still and understanding the topic from a fact perspective. There's a big difference here.
I completely agree with that, but there is some people that they just sit and ponder and they get it. It clicks for them, right? And I had this moment in high school when I really saw that I'm falling behind with math and stuff for the like end of high school exam. And I just sat for like half a year or maybe even like nine months every day, like morning until night, doing the exercises, like going through the motion, not understanding shit, but just doing the stuff that I knew is going to be on the exam because it's there like every year. And this is the only reason that I got to the university that I was for my bachelor's at in the first place, right? Like I wouldn't be there. I was just going through the motions enough to get them off, get the gist, pass the exam well, get to the university. And then university, it started better, right? Because you have a little bit more time. You can focus on the classes that you kind of really wanted to take. Like, of course, the bachelor, it's not like really the classes that you wanted to take, but it's like more or less there, right? But then COVID happened, right? The greatest thing on earth. Unfortunately, it's like online classes, they're great to pass the class, but they're absolutely horrible if you want to learn anything.
Yeah.
So during these 2 years or like a year and a half, I haven't learned anything, like only enough to pass the classes. But it completely killed my like the momentum of the learning from a bachelor's.
I guess it depends what you mean by learning. Like if you mean a grade, it's hackable, right? Like you can get it and like you don't understand jack shit. If you talk about like making something with it, there's a vast difference between like the kid that just seems to get it and then others. And to be really honest, like I would much prefer a dumbass that just like is willing to bash his head and not be have no ego and then you just go and then like iterate like this, than like just a smart like kid that like doesn't want to put the effort and stuff like that. Like the later one can almost always make it, right? And they make dumb mistakes and then you tell them, hey, like this makes no sense. They're like, true. And then never again they're gonna make it, right? Because like they're like, oh, okay, I did that, and then they move on. The other one, you tell them that like you tell them that they suck, right? Like that their life is worthless. Like that's kind of what the core difference, especially like if we're talking about as a measure of intelligence and stuff, like you're in like research impact and things like that. A lot of the great researchers that I respect are barely non-functional. You see them operating in day to day, you're like, what the hell are you doing, right? They're super smart in their stuff because they just go and then they do the motion and they iterate like that. So like, I don't know, like that's one thing. Maybe you can go into the formal education question I had, because like that's one thing I've seen in this kind of setup, which is people kind of get defined themselves by their grade, like the way that they can be able to one shot the thing, especially in engineering for some reason, right? In engineering, like there's a lot of this, right? But overall, dude, I think it's like that's not it at all. That's not a right measure of intelligence in any kind. But if we go, Ludwig, maybe what's your take?
I gotta just interrupt for a second because there's so many things you guys said. Don't agree with like half of the definitions that you guys use, like for learning and intelligence. Like everything was very poor. I think. I mean, it was like it's like a lens, like. What you said about like you guys both said interesting stuff. Like I mean, like the kid at the front of the class that's like learning intuitively and just doesn't seem to have to put on efforts. First of all, I mean, this kid, you said that you would prefer the guy who bashes his head against the and that's mostly because like I mean this kid that is in front of the class, if you keep pushing him further in academia, I mean he's gonna have limits. He's not gonna sit in a graduate level class, mathematical class on like I don't know, algebraic geometry and understand things naturally. There's just nobody in the world. The Grothendieck didn't do that. It doesn't really matter who you are. So it's also about like the complexity and the how much that subject is nested Lego blocks of compressed things, like these towers, so I'm not saying that like undergrad physics, whatever that you guys are talking about, is like trivial, but certainly it's like more likely that somebody could like grok it like with just like faster compute than like then you know what I mean, like, and but that has a limit. So that's why I think like people who bash their head obviously are more like I would also prefer that, because it shows that somebody is willing to. I think raw compute is like the least relevant thing about someone's capacity to learn or to produce interesting things, to some extent. I mean, it depends on the field and whatnot. Like, I mean, like if you're into combinatorics or whatever, and like you have a great affinity for combinatorics, maybe raw compute does help, but like, and maybe you're going to be a great problem solver. You might not be like a great, like, tool maker, or something like that. So I just wanted to say that, then you said like, is learning like, we were saying that jokingly, like, could you say that learning is like just passing a test, and obviously that's never learning. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
that cannot ever be learning. Learning is building up a mental model of something through interaction. That is your own model. There is no the distillation process of like taking something new and putting it in your head. It has to be personal, like the complete
True.
person. It has to be like and so memorizing is a form of intelligence. Pattern matching is a form of intelligence to some extent. Compressing things really quickly, being able to like notice abstractions and stuff like that. But I think learning. I mean, if you've learned something, you must understand it to some extent, And so I agree with you that it's like inherently interactive. Like you must have like being able. I think you said like be able to use it.
Yeah.
I think some things that's a little harder, like because they're too abstract to like directly use. But like overall, you can interact with it. You can play with it. Your model is like resistant to novel things. It's like and so I think that's learning. I wouldn't say any like there's a difference between schooling and education, and I think Nikolai said that very well in that like it's not the schooling that was good for him. I think it's the context, both social and in resources, that allowed him to like reach out and grab things, which was like kind of like the education part. I just was burning. I don't know how to do when you guys are talking. I need to shut up. But
just tell us to shut up. That's fine. Like I'm like I don't mind that. I'm
Alright.
always talking. But no, that's a really good point. Formal education wise, one thing I absolutely loved was, especially in university, was like the research portion, which is kind of hidden, right? You really have to kind of go and fetch it, right? And like for me, at least at my school, like McGill, shout out McGill, like. What was cool was that like in most classes that I had, they had rotation of like a researcher that came in and just show their stuff, and you can go and ask them question. And then like I was always taking like the most cutting edge class I could, even if they didn't make sense. Like, so at one point I was like in a class called Lipid 2, right? So it was about lipids, right? In the cells. Like I was fucking deep in that. It was cool because there was like just a barrage of researcher that came and showed us their stuff. At the edge, there's just no way you're gonna probe. Like, does this guy understand like this? Like they don't even know if they're 100% sure about anything, right? You ask them a question like, yeah, it could be this or that, and then you're like, okay, but like, what does that mean? Like, well, we think it means that, but like after this paper is showing this, but it also has these trees issue, and you're like the kid that has this very rigid kind of like a mentality about like there's right stuff, and then they hated that thing. Like they absolutely hated. They were just like checked out and stuff. But then there was some people that like really were attracted by this kind of edge of our knowledge and being very interested about there is confusion, there's uncertainty, but there's something there to grasp upon, right? And that was honestly like throughout my whole like academic journey, that was the one thing I like. Not even the PhD, like just the research portion, right? And just being able to kind of like use like these concepts, these mental ideas, and then like trying to grasp at something over there. But there's literally no way of like, I don't know, like even you can think about publication, you can think about like, did this guy win this or that prize? But it's almost not even at that. It's just like, are you able to grasp at something of use, right? Or something of use intellectually in this corner of our knowledge? Yeah, there's no grade for this, I think. But for me, like for formal education wise, being able to allow for that was the best thing ever. Like there's almost nothing that came close, like intellectually speaking. I don't know for you, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I have so many takes about formal education and like this whole process of schooling and exploring and researching. Because the university that I did my undergrad at, it was like about 400 or 500 position in the whatever world ranking of universities. It was really great for education. Like, this typical, like you go to the class, you learn the stuff, typical Eastern Europe university. But none of us seen any research. Like we weren't even close to seeing any research, right? And then when I moved to EPFL, it's like it's two different worlds. Like you wonder, how does EPFL put so many research papers when this other university that you attended is also great, and there is so many like good researchers and so many talented people doing the undergrad. Like, why does one put out so many good papers and the other one is like completely not even close, right? And the easiest answer is that one just puts everybody into research labs. Like, even if you don't really know the stuff, like, of course, you kind of know the stuff because, like, you did the classes and you are in the university and you are just go. Basically, if you're put in the lab, you are gonna work with PhDs or postdocs, sometimes professors, but like, none of the top universities professors really have time to work with you. But at least you're close, you're in the proximity.
Yes.
Like, you just by pure accident, you may stumble upon some word of wisdom, and it changes. I think it changes both the way you learn and the way that you look at university, right? Because in one, you are like, okay, I gotta get back home, and then I'm gonna do all these exercises, and then I need to ace the exam, and you do it for 3 years, and then the only thing that you want is like leave the university, go to work, and not think about any exams ever again, right? And the other university is like, oh, here we are gonna work on this research paper, then I'm gonna do some class, then some other guy is doing a startup, and it's like 3 very different activities.
Yeah.
They allow you to put the stuff that you learned to practice, or learn some other stuff that's kind of adjacent to what you learned or you were learning, trying to learn, or just see the thing in new perspective, or like, oh, wow, I learned this thing. I had no idea how to use it. And suddenly I am doing this researchy thingy. And it makes perfect sense that I learned this thing, that somebody came up with this thing, and now I'm just going to use it and it solves my problem.
Yep.
So this, I think, is like perfectly summarizes formal education. Like, if you get to go to a university that enables you to have access to all these different environments and like learning potential and research potential, go and do it. True. If you only have to go to university to get a paper, probably don't go.
And my university was this kind that you talk about. Like the researchers were everywhere. Like it was very easy. They were super approachable also. Like the first lab I got in, I just emailed one of the PhD women there, and I was like, can I work with you? Like, I never did electroencephalography, but like it looks super fun, and I read 3 of your paper. And then I got a meeting on Google Meet or whatever, or in Zoom. And then she was like, okay, what can you do? And I was like, I can do whatever the fuck, right? And then she's like, okay, cool. So like, I have this PhD student that is doing this with me. Can you help him out? And I was like, yeah, man, I'll help him out. And then that's literally, and it was in like a psychiatric, like hospital and stuff. So went there, did that stuff, and it was eye-opening that like after 4 months, they were like, do you want to lead a project? And I was like, what? You want me to lead? And they're like, yeah, we need to do this memory thing. So I was like, I guess I can try. And then I tried it and put the project together. It's like, that's almost it. Good job. Try to do it this way instead. I was like, okay, like, cool. Now you have to get the participant. So like, I was an undergrad and I was like already like getting the gist of it. But then you realize the shape of research, and it's true. It's like much different than just like the tests and stuff. Like it helps to get like the raw mechanical skill in, like to be able to go and then like have this open space to work with. It's a different feeling completely. And I like what you said about like entrepreneurship also, because like from my experience, like this is what like drove me a bit in entrepreneurship and like to found my own startup. It has a similar shape than research, which is like you have all of these unknown and you could do whatever you want, but you have to make it work. And you get this feedback from the environment, and then you go and you do the stuff, and this doesn't work, and I need to learn HR, otherwise and then you do that, and then we have to do this with the lawyer now, and like, okay, and you go and you iterate like that. But it takes a certain type of person to kind of thrive in there without like freaking the fuck out. Ludwig, maybe you have some thought on this.
Well, yeah, I mean, it sounds everything just sensible. I agree with both of you. It's nice to hear. I mean, I'm not anti-formal education at all. I've written pretty extensively on X, I think, about my thoughts. I think it's important to understand the difference between schooling and formal education, and like just I think you guys described the benefits of it. I think when I was a kid, I wanted to go to top universities. I thought I was destined for it. I mean, I thought very highly of myself. So I thought that, by like 11 or 12, it was very clear to me that I belonged like in the best American universities. And it looked like pretty straightforward for me to go there. I was excellent at everything, not, formal school, like the middle school and stuff like that. But I was, everybody that I met that would be relevant to put me on that path. Was excited. But then it just didn't happen. So I just pivoted. Looking back, the lack of formal education, I mean, I think it definitely hurt me in many ways. I've talked about that before, but I think that, I learned things very, well, first of all, for a long time, I learned them very poorly. I learned them to make money. You don't need much to make money. I mean, depends on how much money you want to make. But it wasn't very difficult to learn things enough to be employable and to keep growing. Also, once I found out that it wasn't even about skills, it was more about like social gaming, and I was excellent at like, moving around in companies, I was like, oh, okay, well, what the fuck? Who cares about what we're doing? This is trivial. Everything was fairly trivial anyway. And then the people were just like, very playable. So I was like, all right, like,
let's go.
Yeah, I don't need to learn anything. I mean, I'm gonna learn to like just in case I need to like climb up and like get someone's job or something. But like, I'm not learning to like understand. I mean, I don't care about anything. That's how I thought. And I mean, I obviously had interests already. I went through many arcs from a young age. I had a physics arc. And I wore a lab coat. After watching Steins Gate for like a year in my room. I had a bunch of whiteboard. I had many phases. Wittgenstein was huge for me, so I got a lot into all of the things. And from that, Bertrand Russell and like a bunch of stuff. So I had many arcs throughout the years, but I thought they were two different things. I thought like the real world where I go out and I make money, it's like a game, and like and like you can just do whatever as long as you make the money. And then what I was doing personally was like, completely interest driven and not formal. It was completely, driven by my interest and driven by like the next thing that I think is interesting. It was very usually weaved by people, interesting characters. Wittgenstein wasn't interesting to me because of his philosophy at first. It was interesting because, he was different and he seemed miserable and he had like a complicated life. So I was like, okay, that's neat. And then, same for everybody else. It was mostly like people driven. And then I got into the things they got into, mostly because I wanted to be more like that, not especially because I wanted to like, I have a solid understanding of like 20th century foundations of mathematics. Like, I mean, after 6 months, yes, but it was only because I wanted to download the personality of whoever was the person in question. And I think maybe it's good to frame it that like, I spent a lot of time alone, even like, girlfriends throughout, like, I was in a like 7-year, 8-year relationship or whatever, and not being a 3-year relationship, but like, I spent a lot of time alone. So I have I just spent time doing that. But all that to say that now, especially the last 2 years, maybe 3 years, when I got back into machine learning in like late 2021, had to kind of formalize a lot of my learnings. Which, for example, I was like moderately okay with linear algebra. I'd like tried to make 3D games before, and I had done a bunch of stuff. So I had some concepts of like, but it was very applied linear algebra, and it was like more as a toolbox that like is I put things in, it gives me things out, and I learned through that interaction, not really like the inside machinery of linear algebra. And so I went through that, and I realized that I was really, I accumulated a lot of things. They're all very disconnected. Most of them was through experience or through like kind of playing with things, either for more like applied things like programming that on a computer or in my head or writing or talking about them. But I did not know how to formally learn anything. And over the last 2 years, I spent a lot of time, I think, kind of reshaping myself, because I understood that I think I always knew that it's good to do a mixture of like breadth first and depth first. Like you want to mix them up. Like if you're learning programming, you probably want to do something that interests you, that's super way too big, and it's not like the great like fundamentals, like one by one kind of ladder. But you also want to like you want to mix it up. You want to maybe spend a weekend like right. So I always think that like I backtracked, I went really far, way past the edge of my abilities, and then I would backtrack when I realized, okay, I don't really actually understand that. But that's not formal learning, as I figured out by talking to a bunch of researchers and mathematicians. The way they knew things was, it was more aesthetically pleasing than mine. I liked it, the way they spoke. I liked it, the way they felt confident. It's like they were, when I heard like my first like mathematician friends telling me about like what they went through with real analysis and like how it gave them like mathematical rigor and what they were and I was like, well, shit, I don't have any of that. Like I am really kind of, and I felt not maybe entirely shallow, but like I just felt like, okay, maybe just doing everything based on interest is not like the best way. And so I spent some time like trying to formalize. I'm still formalizing a lot of my but I think university would have, a good university, maybe the ones like you described, would have given me like an environment, and it just like taught me the tools to like actually like, you know, what does it look like to you know, I think the lack of rules and the lack of like the lack of structure in my life, the lack of kind of obligations. Like I had money, I can do whatever I want all the time. Okay, cool. It's like it didn't actually really, it wasn't really conducive for. I mean, I put a lot of stuff in my head, but it didn't really gel very well. And yeah, and I couldn't do things on demand also. You know, like that was always was terrified with doing things on demand. In the way that, like, you know, if you ask me to like formally define like a sheaf, you know, or something like that, I would have been terrified years ago, because it's like the way that I actually things was really wonky and it didn't sound like it. Yeah. And I think over the last 2 years, I've gotten better to some extent. And I've tried to mimic the kind of what I think is like, you know, what you read from the biographies of like, you know, the greats of the 20th century, what the kind of environment they were like, and like the kind of, you know, you have to rub against the world, you have to be with people who are doing this kind of stuff, you have to like, you know, for like speaking out loud and like, you know, and you have to be judged a lot. And for me, I never understood, because I was good at my job, I made money, and I would do everything that I want on my own in, you know, in my own little world. And so that's been difficult, I think. But yeah, I don't know if that's.
And there's 2 points here. Like one, the first point, like about I think there's a great skill that you developed to know how little you have to know to do the thing, right? Which is absolutely important, right? A lot of people get bogged down like this and say like, there's no way I can do this because it's like 16 years of backlog of things to do, versus just like, my man, we need this shipped, and it doesn't matter if you don't understand 100%, right? Like here's the level of abstraction that you need for this, and just make it like, get it done, right? And it works. Later on, when it's done and then like it's going, you're going to be able to study it, and we move, right?
Yeah.
There's this aspect. The second aspect is like, there's a very high social component in like job and research also. Like it is extremely social. Like it's about people. Like it's barely about like that much about the technicity, especially enterprise and like I don't know, like building things for the economic value and stuff. Most of it is like the bottleneck, like the way to make things moving forward is just like navigating a bunch of folks, and then you get the thing done, and then like, oh, now we have the technical problem. Turns out it's not that hard, right? And then like there's way we can conceptualize it, and oh, we made this mistake, but ended up didn't do anything, and then it's fine, right? Like you see, that part is one, but then research is also terribly a social endeavor where if you look at any, and I do this all the time, like I talk to a lot of researchers, and like if I try to bring one for a very complex project, they will never agree alone because they don't understand the whole project, and they're like, oh, I need to bring my other guy, and then they bring in the other guy, and then like during the interview, if you see it, they switch place and stuff. But even these two together, they don't understand fully the whole thing. And I know that because I was also in the same kind of boat with my team, which were, to be honest, like most of them were light years ahead of me in the understanding of consciousness, like the whole literature, how it relates. One was really good with like how it related to sleep and like all of this literature. There's like tons and tons of stuff in there. Another one was really good at like the criticality aspect of like the different brain state, and they were very complementary. But then we need to do the analysis, and we have to couple all this together, and we have to write the paper, right? So really it was kind of like a social contract of 5 people. And then some stuff I delegated to them. And then you need to know how to navigate. Like we were blocked at some point for like a spectral analysis that we're doing on like the brain data that we had. And it was leading to nothing when trying to do like machine learning on it. But fundamentally it was not like a problem of like the literature. It was just a problem of like, we need to have smaller windows, and we need to have like different features. What the fuck we do? And I was able to unblock some part of it just because I was like, graph theory might be good, and we can go functional connectivity maybe. And then there was no basis in literature for this. And then we did the thing, and turned out, yes, there was basis in functional connectivity that I didn't know about. And then the graph was a good thing because it was using the criticality literature, but I didn't know about it. And then we were able together to kind of like circle that up. Yeah. So like there's a lot of people that like, I don't know, like they try to get into research, and they have this kind of idealistic idea of like, I have to be like the thing, right? And then like, I have to know how to do everything, and then I have to think, right? But honestly, like it's mostly just being around people that are interested in the same problem and just chatting about it. like 90% is just like, we chat about this, no, we chat about that. And then you get very excited about something and then you do it. And like, oh, now it's the deadline for this paper. And then you go and then you rush. And then you're like, fuck, the run will not work. And then you ablate something and this thing work. And then you put it there. The reviewer told you this. And then you get a really nice paper and you get it when it work, right? Like, literally, like that's the thing. And then there's also like the brain warfare that is happening against the reviewer if you're publishing something. And the first time I saw that, I was like, what the fuck are we doing, right? Like literally trying to think what the reviewer will say and then preemptively do some experiment to put it there, but you don't want to put it there first. You leave a hole in your paper so that like the reviewer will see that and when I saw that, I was like, so we're gonna spend like the next three months just doing this to get this paper accepted. Yes. And then the PI was like, and by the way, it will not be accepted in this journal. I was like, so what the fuck are we doing this? Like for the next journal that we're gonna like take this whole thing and move it there. Yeah, it's like it's very like much still a big social construct. And like the knowledge that you see in the research paper that they get accepted and stuff is one part of it, but there's the whole thing that is behind that is not necessarily seen and stuff. Maybe you have some idea you want to add on this. Did you publish already?
I was lucky enough to publish at NeurIP's workshop, so it's not much, but I mean it's
very good.
We're getting there. There is another paper that we are trying to publish for like half a year now, but it's been a disaster, man. Like lately, conferences and reviews for conferences. It's I mean, not to get into this, but it's a shit show. Like honestly, like half of the reviews that we got were like clearly LLM generated. Like you can put the paper into any LLM and it will come back with exactly the same remarks as the reviewers had. And there is also this whole aspect, as you mentioned, of this like mental warfare of, okay, what the reviewer will not like, so I have to do this, even though because I worked on this project for so long, I know this doesn't make sense in this scenario maybe.
Yeah.
But just because the reviewer will probably talk about it, I have to do it, right? Even though the literature that I mentioned says X, the reviewer will point at X, so I have to specifically talk about X, so it's concluded, right? And stuff like this. So that's one of the reasons that I don't really like this rush to publishing, although I didn't do a lot of it. In total, I think I've helped in like writing 3 papers, but it's just a completely different thing that you also have to learn. And I think you kind of have to like it, or at least have a person that likes it that will write the paper that you worked on. But yeah, I wanted to also get back to the formal education thingy. So whenever I get these questions in my DMs from like random people being like, oh, I see that you're at EPFL. I also want to go to EPFL, blah, blah, blah. Is it worth it? How do I do it? Etc., etc. I think it's very much worth it just to get the exposure to all of this, right? To startups, to research, to the community, etc. And also, if you want to be doing research, you can 100% do it without top university. You can 99% do it without university, but there is so much to it, like these additional little things, like the whole social aspect, the publishing aspect, sometimes compute aspect, that at certain universities is much easier than doing it alone. Like really, if you can afford it, if you have access, if you have grades that are good enough, or maybe if you have a few more years that you can push to get to a top university, I think it's still very much worth it.
Just the equipment thing is a big thing. Like I got access to like the most ridiculous shit I ever seen in my life, and I could just go and use like at some point we had like the most cutting edge, like high density EEG, like a headset that could give like a shocks and like a quick current in the brain, so you can actually like modulate what was going on while you were coding during like a task in a BCI. So again, my PI was like, do you want to like help us out, like do the BCI? I was like, fuck yeah, man, let's do it. When will I ever have the chance? Like this thing costs like $300K. Am I gonna buy it? They're not gonna sell it to me, right? And then like I can just play around with it and get the thing done. You rarely have all that.
Anything else?
Yeah,
that is in tens of millions. Like, of course, we're talking mainly from the point of view of machine learning, which is you kinda can do it on your own. But if you do any let's say, quote unquote, proper science that is still very much very expensive equipment that you really can't get alone, you probably very much should go to university.
Yeah. Good. This is perfect. Like a lot of good insight. But I would like to know a bit more. Like, given all this context in your background, how do you guys go about deciding, like, okay, what's the next thing I want to learn in my life? Right? Did you have like some sort of technique that you're using?
I will preface by saying that I will answer. Most of my answers are not what the like anything that I would say to other people. Right? I've talked to thousands and thousands of kids. That's not what I tell them. It depends on what your objectives are and like the kind of background that you're in and like what's the context of your life and stuff like that. But most importantly, it matters what you're optimizing for. But no, I do not have any. I work still purely based on my aesthetic and moral values, like and what is interesting to me. And what's interesting to me is it turns out like there's some shared structure and core invariance to all of them that seems to be like found repeatedly in all the things that I seem to care about. And so I obviously tend to gravitate towards things that I like have this shared structure, but I do it mostly based on interest. Again, still around people also, like I'll find a specific researcher or some working mathematician of some kind who seems interesting, and he has some like sharp thoughts that are like interesting to me and I kind of alien and stuff like that, and so I'll like dig in. I'll be like, oh, who's Ravi? Whatever, algebraic geometry, that's the thing with the Grothendieck. Wait, Ravi is telling me, and so I'll look up and I'll be, oh wow, Ravi has a book called The Rising Sea coming out, in November last year. This was earlier 2025. And I'll be like, okay, well, hold on a second. And then, I dig in and I build a somewhat of an ontology and like, a pantheon of characters. And I just, and then at some point I kind of like, I have a lay of the land, but it's completely incorrect. It doesn't matter what's the actual lay of the land. I have some story of what the land is. I have some history of algebraic geometry. I have some of the characters that have popped up after, and then at some point, I'm like, all right, like, how do I get in? If I talk to an algebraic geometer, what's the thing that they do? Like, what is it about? Sure, I have a lay of the land. I know like the mathematical objects they're looking at. I know what, like, I have some sense of like, obviously very loose sense at that stage of like, what's the current research. But and then this is when it kind of like turns into like maybe a more formal thing. I think also for me, I couldn't, there are times where like some projects require like specific learnings for sure. With this like research I've been doing since December, like I've had to like kind of like look up all the way back and kind of understand like not because of especially one thing. It's not like actually Thompson's 1917 like first traces of morphogenesis was like especially like palpitating to me, like right. But it's like I need to understand how these thoughts were formed and what I need to understand why is it that like this is the current research and what people are saying. So I'm kind of like sometimes it's driven by this, but most of the time I just think it's because they seem interesting, they seem cool, and often I like them because I think I'm fairly good at abstraction and like being around different rooms. It allows me to like pour over things, to think about things differently. Like an example maybe is a couple years ago I had like a short homotopy type theory phase, which is like let's say different like foundations of mathematics and like set theory. And it has like there's some interesting ideas in it, and there's a lot of and I didn't even know about category theory by then, so I didn't understand what like a infinity group parade was or anything like that. But it was interesting to me that they would say like terms are proofs and are also types. So there's this trinity, a term and a proof and a type is the same thing, and they all live in a space, and you have like these paths between your types, and you can have paths between paths, and there's this like nesting of paths between paths, and there's these ways to reduce things to see if things are equivalent, and like their notion of equality is completely different, and I wouldn't have been able to do anything with homotopy theory. I wasn't going to open like a cubical Agda and like formalize anything or do anything. But like it was cool. Like I was like, oh well, that's neat. I see that. I mean, I can think about these things in that way, like the concept of like univalence or something, or like the homotopies of paths or something. That's like kind of like applicable to some extent. Or you can think about it that way. It's like a model to approach that. And I think that seems to be what I do. Is like I dip in too many things. At some point there is a larger interest that develops, and then I will go back to like all the pools I've dipped in, and I will like go back to them if I and
I really like how you frame it about like laying the land and like looking at like if it's correct or not. I think in mathematics, at least there is a structure, there's blocks and stuff like that, right? But I realized that in most areas that are not with maths and stuff,
that are less like formal and like highly structured.
the map is fucked. Like,
yes.
Like, because I was reading this text, I was really into neuroscience, right? And I was reading this textbook and stuff, and I was like, wow, the cell, and then this is inside of it, and blah, blah. And then when I was in the lab and we got the shit published, I was like, holy shit. Like, I now contributed to this. But I was there when we had the meetings and internally and stuff, and I was like, we don't fucking, like,
Yeah, we don't.
it was my Western blood that went into this paper and that made this statement, right?
Yeah.
And I'm 65% sure that was the correct statement, right?
Yeah.
Same thing afterward with like the pure neuro stuff, because we're recording. I was there when I recorded some of the people that we got into the study. Like some of them had, because like, in my case, we had like, it was consciousness stuff. So we had to go to ICUs, and then we had to kind of go and like get people to be in our study, but like they were unconscious. So we had to get the okay from the doctor and then like whoever they had with them. And then we're recording. But most of these people were completely messed up beyond recognition. One of them had to have like her skull cap removed and stuff. And we're recording in that situation. Like, how do you record with that, right? You have one part of the headset that touch the scalp, that touch the skull, and the other one is floating on the skin that is like literally next to the brain, right? And this is in the data set with the rest. So like there's all sort of like messed up element. So what you get at the end, the formal map is an approximation of what we think is a thing. But then the actual thing is like, if you look at the actual evidence, can point into two different, literally opposite, correct, like like visualization of the thing. And like understanding this, at least in that specific aspect, like understanding that the map is messed up, like what it does to you is that like, there's no way if you go bottom up that you're going to reach whatever thing you want to do at the end there, because where you're at right now, it doesn't mean much, right? So like you get the okay, like mentally, to just go at the top and just like, yeah, let's go, let's do the stuff. We're gonna look at the thing, see like a different signal I'm getting, and at some point you have to do it and you yellow it, and then you get the information and you're able to do something with it.
You get confidence. What you said is like the key. Like you basically need, I mean, you're never going to get the lay of the land of any field. That's not actually like, really tractable. Also, it doesn't really even make sense because there's not a singular lay of the land. There are like, different kind of dimensions and layers of like, there's different ontologies and semantics and things. And like, the things can be interpreted in 20 different ways. And like, it's like, there's no real lay of the land, but the confidence that you said, like, it's kind of like, you just, at least for me, I want enough of a lay of the land that I'm like confident enough in my model of it that I'm willing to act, and then you were drastically wrong, and that's okay. Now you can update, but you just need enough to have a model of things. I think what you said about mathematics also, you're right that it's like different in nature because it doesn't have like a substrate. Like, I mean, like it's like experiments are like free, quote unquote, not really, but like, they are free in that they're not physically implemented, quote unquote, unless you're doing computational stuff, then they're very much physically implemented, but whatever. But also it's the same in mathematics also, in that like not there are mathematical truths and things like that. But like, I mean, if you take a look at the foundations of mathematics, I think it's super scary. It's not like and certainly the transition between abstract mathematical models and the physical world is it is full of approximations. I mean, there's nothing in the physical world that is actually absolutely understood at all whatsoever. There's not a single thing that we understand. Now, the beauty of the physical world is that it's somehow not necessary for many things that are very cool to actually be fully precise, which is computationally impossible. But you can basically just have this kind of like little things that are like some approximation of it. Some of them are great. Some of them are actually like, you could get them infinitely more precise if you kept, doing the thing, computing the thing maybe. But it doesn't even matter because like, we're planes fly around, nobody dies. And it's like, this is a lot of approximations. We have absolutely no fucking idea of the actual like real, like we do not have a universe-sized computer that can freeze frame and like, look at every single independent, like, this is not how it works, right? We model things. And then, this is for the modeling part, but then if you want to attach like a meaning to it, then that's also what you said, is that like there's 20 different interpretations for many things. And I think maybe to me, what I tend to gravitate towards for like, what does that thing mean? Which is like, I think all of us are super interested in like, what does it mean? In the problem of consciousness or whatever. I think like the like Dutchian, like David Dutch, or like, kind of like a proper approach of like how the fecundity of the theory, like how much does it give you, does it allow you to make, better predictions? Does it allow you to explain more broadly? Is it more resistant to change? I think that doesn't mean it's true, or it's there's no like truth in, like, I mean, it's not, there things are truer than others, but it's very unlikely that you get to like absolute truth. Even in mathematics, where again you can prove things to be true, but it is based on a set of axioms, and there is like things like undecipherability and incompleteness and stuff like that. So like even there it's like and so I basically choose things. One, I mean, I'm very stupid, I think, so I choose things very much based on like aesthetics. I think like whatever feels or interesting. Like the fecundity here is like
you say that, but like the team that I just interviewed, I asked them like, why did you choose, and it like vibe. That was what they said.
Yeah. I mean, that it's important. I think like human intuition is like important. And I also like I trust myself that I will update if I'm met with irreparable evidence. Like, I mean, that's okay. But I believe in things firmly until they're like bent, because otherwise, if you don't believe in anything firmly, I mean, you can't do anything. You certainly can't progress. You can't, do an experiment. You can't like, you can't interpret it, which is like very important. We really, there is like a translation layer from any data that you get from an empirical experiment to like interpretation and attaching like meaning to it. Then like, you just gotta have you just want your theory or explanation to be like, nice enough that it holds enough, that it's generalizable to some extent, that it gives you a bit more than like, like a poor theory would be like, explaining the thing, and it's like, super specific to that thing. And it's, or it's so broad that like everything fits. Like, I think one of my problems, I will stop speaking right after this, but about like active inference, for example, is like, and the free energy principle, like for instance, school, is like everything is active inference. Like, I mean, Markov blankets and like, action perception, like, update your model, update the world. Like, I mean, okay, everything is that. You can look at everything that way. It gives you very little. It gives you very little. It's an interesting theory. It certainly is true in some sense. I mean, you can think about things doing that, and it's something that's, I think, for people who are into it, at least, I think it's viscerally like, okay, like, dude, this is how agents are. This is, there's an environment, there's an agent, there's this kind of like Markov blanket, and you have, an agent in an environment can only either update the environment, well, it has a model of the environment, and it's trying to reduce the loss in some way, like, kind of correct its predictions so that they're more accurate. And the only ways to do that is to like update the environment, so take an action, or update your model, right? And so it's like, that's great, but it's also like so general that like when applied to neuroscience, I mean, it's like, you can look at everything, and like, you can look at the cell and say that, you can look at like, some things where, maybe a clock that's a little harder, because it's like very low, it's a very mechanical, object, but everything else that's a little like a thermostat, it certainly is, it's not quite a clock. I mean, thermostat moves on its own, it's pretty magical that we build it in such a way that like it reacts to temperature, and you could put active inference over that, and it would be like a very low value compared to like us and our dreams and our thing. But anyway, I don't even know what the fuck I was talking about. But
No, that was great, man. This is good. And like the point that you said about like the vision of the field, I remember one time I was stuck in an experiment, and I was just like asking around. Very smart, like head of two different lab. They told me absolutely the opposite of what the other has been saying. So I was like, okay, so I have to decide basically what to do. Maybe it's gonna be a mix of like these two things, are test a bit of that, test a bit, and then we'll see. Maybe there's a third path. Maybe if I ask another person, he will tell me something else. So I mean, at some point, it's just like it's the vision based on your background of the thing, and like the one thing that I try to remember all the time is that like I don't like your vibe, your taste, your aesthetic about something, your feelings. You have to remember that like the brain is one hell of a pattern matching machine that is taking like very different signal and putting them together into like you being able to go into the world, right? So like most of the time when I have a good feeling about problem, kind of, if you follow this, like for some reason, like you're gonna find something there, right? And if you have a bad feeling about something, like, I think this shape kind of suck, and then like you go and you do it, and like, true, that there's this thing that is disgusting. Or if I have the feeling of like, it seems like there's a hole somewhere, like I don't know something, right? Or I feel stressed and anxious, like I don't know something enough. I go check and like, okay, cool. And it's as if like the surface is now kind of walkable. Very hard to describe, right? But it at some point, like you just read stuff and you're able to kind of like figure out with your feelings, like if it's safe to go there or not, right? It doesn't have to do anything with logic. I'm not going through a checklist or anything like that, or like using any theory. I'm just like vibing it out and like, yeah, I think that this is not the way to go. This one I like, right? If I had to explain why I like it, I'm like, he has a rounder shape than the other one. The other one is a bit too spiky, right? Nah. And then you go and you do it. Maybe your thought on what how do you decide? Like, well, how do you go about it? And like, yeah, I'm gonna learn this stuff.
There is so many things. There's so many things. Like there is no checklist, of course. What I think we're just very lucky, right? Because we are kind of in this field that is making a lot of money, and all the things that are adjacent to this field are also usually making a lot of money. So even if we go by vibes or by the things we like, by the things that look cool, that we feel are cool, we usually end up in a good place, right? So I'm very lucky. I never went with music or any other stuff that I wanted to do. Like at one point I wanted to write books, right? Like imagine that. Of course it's great. Like I'd love to do it. I'd love to be making money on it, but like the chance is it's not high. At least here, I can be mediocre and still be making money. If I was a mediocre writer, well, that wouldn't end good. I think it's really hard to like advise somebody on this. I think if you are lucky with the things that you like, then you should just go by what's the next thing that I happen to like. What's the next thing that happens to look cool for me? Because otherwise you will just burn yourself out doing things that you don't want to do, doing things that you don't have fundamentals to do, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, but here you two are seeing kind of a similar thing, but it didn't seem like you ended up over there by accident, like in this good field that has a lot of inherent value to kind of keep doing this. If you think about it, like you took a leap of faith because you thought you would not make it, and you still did make it into that university. And you, Ludwig, like you kind of knew you wanted to do video game, and then you were able to kind of modelize the value that you're gonna get out of it based on like, yeah, it's gonna be fun, but like hard work and then no money. So then I would mean everything gonna suck with my family and whatever the fuck. You still were able to modelize what you're learning somewhat based on this to end up in one of the most booming field, like in terms of economic impact in the whole fucking universe, right?
The answer to this is quite simple. Like we are all, I think, in this field, like just excited by the discovery. And somebody put it nicely some months ago that this generation is looking for its own Manhattan Project or whatever, like its own kind of exploding field like physics 100 years ago or something. All these people that are kind of mathematically inclined, but you don't have to be very talented at it. Like you just have to bang your head against the wall, be somewhat inclined to it, and then really want to discover, like learn new stuff. I think you'll kind of just converge to this field because it's like the place to be right now if you want to try and find new stuff about the world.
So it's more that the field attracted you think, than you being attracted to the field.
Like you do this random motion and you somehow like just end up where the potential takes you, right?
Yeah.
So like I think like whatever you do, if you have this kind of gist in you and you at least try to put in the work, like you don't have to go in the perfect direction, just try to go in the general direction. Put in the hours, try to meet with people, try to learn new things, and it will get you there, like in the a bit better or a bit worse place, but there.
I think Mikola is very humble, by the way. Maybe Polish nature or something. I don't know. But certainly you're very humble. I think to some extent, like
Infinity.
Yeah, like there's like a happy circumstance of like of finding things at the right moment and stuff like that for sure. I think there is like a heavy part of like the embeddings or like of yourself, like your all of the things that are in your head and all your experiences and your nature on your kind of like I don't know your environment for sure. There's a lot of people like Nikolai who play Counter-Strike 16 hours a day and live with their parents and are not going to do anything. And that's like and there are some that with slightly different embeddings or with more some ability BT or whatever, they would have been Mikolai. They might have been better. They might have been worse. But so I agree that there's some amount of luck. Luck is definitely manufactured. I don't think I've ever been lucky. I don't think anything was given to me. I crafted every single thing that I've ever had. I don't think certainly that my embeddings were especially were great to induce what came out of me. It came out of me because of the nature of who I am. Like it was both put in and also manufactured through immense amount of time torturing myself. And I think Nikolai is very similar, just to be clear. I mean, even though it's not quite, maybe you wouldn't put it like that, but it's how would you explain that Nikolai too is playing Counter-Strike, 16 hours a day? I've done that, by the way. No offense to anybody. I played Dota, 16 hours a day.
RuneScape.
And I had my own semi-professional little venture in tier 3 teams in Dota and stuff like that. That.
Damn, it's cool.
But yeah. So I think it's being too kind on oneself to say that it's luck. It's also being delusional to say that it was all completely I made this happen entirely and stuff like that. Obviously, I had a tremendous amount of luck with the people I met and the things that were put in my head at the right times and stuff like that. But I think regardless, for example, the fact that Nikolai didn't choose to become a writer, and I didn't choose to become some other things that might have interested me. That's also some kind of a policy model in your mind on if Nikolai was able to project more than month in advance and understood the socioeconomics of his country and the situation of his parents and if he had been at all exposed, which I assume he was, on the implicit hierarchy of what it is like to be in society. Do you want to be a fucking loser and make $200 a month being a bum-ass writer, or do you want to be fucking rich, go to Switzerland? You know what I mean? Obviously the policy model just adjusted. It's unless you're really into writing. And in this case, that's a completely different thing. It really depends on what you're optimizing for. If you're optimizing for, any amount of traditionally accepted, success, then obviously we kind of pivot from books if your policy model is well adjusted enough. Maybe you weren't even meant, I would say to be a book writer. If you're really meant to be, you would have just, been a bum whole while. Maybe we never have, and that's okay. That's what I think of myself, at least, for all the things I could have been. Is this is all I could have been.
So there's this recurring theme of people talking how imposter syndrome fuels them, or guilt fuels them, or remorse fuels them, or this need to achieve just one more thing. I achieved what I wanted to achieve for my whole life. Okay, great. What's the new thing to achieve? I think it's, at least for a lot of the people that I met, let's say at EPFL or now at ETH or wherever in these places, it was their story, right? They just wanted to achieve the next thing. They weren't happy with the place where they were at before, so they wanted more, and then they wanted a bit more, and then still a bit more. And I also had this realization a few years ago with some of the friends I had in high school and middle school. I always thought we are all kind of the same, right? We're all gonna do well. Everybody wants to do well. They want to work. They want to put in the work. But suddenly you realize that the friends that was putting in the work, he's sitting in front of the TV for 10 hours a day, and he's also only oh yeah, I totally am going to do something tomorrow or next week or whatever. And you realize that even though you feel imposter yourself and you are not doing anything and you are not achieving anything, suddenly you achieved stuff. And these people that are really not putting in the work, they kind of stopped and are not developing anymore. So I think this guilt and this imposter syndrome and a lot of these hard to talk about things are sometimes fueling a big percentage of the people in the field.
I think also one of the really good quality that just kind of always work, and in the hindsight you're wow, that was destiny and stuff like that. It's just being able to go into the world and try to have value, right, while still managing to have value within yourself, and you manage these two things at the same time. This is what works. Having value within yourself, and you're I just want to play, and then you just play without any interaction with the real world. By real, I mean just people outside of you, because we're in this society with a bunch of other human, right? I mean, this is usually where it kind of limits yourself, and then you kind of just try to make something I want to be a researcher for what? for me to be a research, like instead of like, I actually want to do research and publish and help these people. And there's a very different kind of dynamic that goes into this, but it's really this. And like, you still have to have the value attached to yourself, because you're like, otherwise you're going to end up into a job that you fucking hate. Right. And like in a domain that you don't care about, like then you're there and then you're miserable anyway. So like, it's being able to balance these two, but usually like if you just have the drive to go and then see what has value and then just try to provide the value, you're gonna make it. Like everybody that I talk to that is like that. Oh, I did a stint in this and then I was doing that, but then I saw this, and then they ended up into like exactly the thing that they should have been doing from the start. But like, and if you look at the path, you're like, yeah, you got lucky to get there. But it's a bit more than that. It's more like, I'd say, like you're over there and then you're gonna get all of these feedback from the environment that is like showing you, oh, this is a bit better, and oh, this is also a bit better, and but they're also for you, and you're like, oh, okay, and then you go follow this, but not even consciously, but then you ended up exactly where you should be at, and mostly like in stuff that you had no place to be at the start, because you're like, yeah, this is high valence for me. I'm gonna go there, right? I'm gonna figure out. I know that even if I spend like 3 weeks miserable, I'll be able to figure out, and then we're gonna be good, right? But then you go and you follow that path, and also like you realize sometimes that you have to do random shit, right? Like, why do I need to do that? And like you can't really put it into the word, but like in some shape or form you're gonna need it, like to go to the right spot, right? Even if you don't see the right spot already, and then when the opportunity comes, you're able to take it directly, and like it looked like luck, but I think there's a higher level processing subconsciously or something that is happening that has to get to there. You were about to say something?
Maybe you've put it nicer in the words than I have. So maybe it's not explicitly luck, but just this putting in the work into seemingly random directions at times puts you in the right place, right? Like just put in the work, sometimes at random, sometimes towards something like you want to achieve, but like just in the general direction of the goal, and it's gonna be fine.
I'll say one thing, because I spent a lot of time with these kids on X, of course, right? Like, and some of them have housed, and some of them have flown and went to sea, and some of them have talked to their parents and things like that. And I think there's like first of all, we said stuff. I mentioned like the guys playing like 12 hours of CS or whatever, and but I don't I think it's important to say that, like, I'm not that it can be. It's a moral failure in my moral system to indulge in oneself, okay? But also it's like culturally really understandable, in that like the incentive systems are very wrong. I think the same of someone who indulges in these ways, in a way that's not very productive to society. Then I think of of a lot of the San Francisco folks, a lot of people that I go and meet. I'm going to San Francisco in 2 weeks. I'm going to strike a lot of hands, and I think a lot of these people are disgusting people, and it's because the incentive, like, it's just on the other spectrum, right? It's just on the spectrum. I mean, here the incentives are certainly like, there's the pretense that it's useful for the world, and there's pretend that it's isolated, but really it is another form of indulgence. The people that Nikolai was describing of, like, they want a little more, and they want a little more, and they want a little more. There's a profound lack of anchor. And a lot of these people, they just simply come out of societies and environments where they lack this capacity to. They're just terrible judges morally and aesthetically of what it means, right? If I wanted to get a lot of money, I would be working on, like, AI formalization, and I would be raising 18 to 25 million. I'd be going to my little friends in San Francisco, and that would be great. I think it's garbage. I'm not interested in it. I'd rather be poor and die than do things that I don't want. It doesn't matter to me. I am not interested even in I think, Yasin, you said that beautifully. I think that's what makes you, you appear as a very kind person every time I've, seen you interact with phonics and stuff. And I'm not even as far as you are with, like, this nice feeling of, like, wanting to kind of produce for the world. I think I'm actually moderately disinterested in the world. I like to be good locally to people around me, for sure, but actually I've very little need to be out in the world, I think, and, like, especially do things there. It's easier to say now than it was, the first thought of my
and
life.
Yet here you are. Right, here you are chatting about all of your knowledge for everybody. You do it like by luck, by accident, almost.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, like, to some extent, that's kind of like, I would say, like, talking about myself, I think, like, in that way, I think it's somewhat ugly, and it's certainly, like, it's not a good thing. There's some good things that come out of it. I think X has actually taught me that. I think that with Alex, I mean, first of all, I would never have done that. We wouldn't even have met. But let's assume that we would have met otherwise. I learned that even though I think it's fundamentally a terrible thing to talk about yourself in the way that I do on X, it somehow packages things that like influences people that I didn't predict that kids would DM me telling me like I'm like a top mentor for them, or the a platonic ideal of someone to be like, and so that's nice. That's why I excuse myself by like okay, I'll talk to you for like 2 hours or whatever, and that's okay. It's still kind of a little iffy. But yeah, to go back and wrap up my point, I wanted to like be nicer to the like people who were kind of like shitting on, which is like the people who just don't have it. They don't have this aching scenes. Like nothing in this society is like I mean even the agency that people that do have agency, they're incentivized by the wrong means anyway. I mean, these people just want more money. They want a bigger house. They want another like little fucking light on their SF or whatever. They want to run Waymo and go shake hands. And it's like even the incentives there are moderately wrong. I mean, they're not exactly what one should be doing. I think for me, so, and I'm very judgmental, so it's easy for me to dispatch judgment, I think. And I wouldn't advise, any kid that's in the period of their life where they are trying to make something of themselves in the world, in the real world, in the concrete world of society, and having a job and having, being able to have a family and provide for it, to do any of the things that I'm saying, because you do need to play the game. You can play it nicely, but you do need to play the game. At some point for me, I realized that I was not interested in the game anymore, mostly. And then I started playing different games that are, I think less attached to like, making money or doing anything or even providing anything for like, the world in any concrete, like, applied way, and that's okay also. And I think we should probably, we should frame, a broader range of what it could be like for kids, and tell them that like it's pretty long and you can have different phases and stages and you can grind it out for a couple of years. You do have to play the game unless you're blessed with money from the get-go, and then you can switch it up. You can switch it up. You can do things that are not useful for the world, but that are useful to you. They're interesting to you. And maybe they turn into something useful for the world later, but even that is not super relevant, I think, maybe.
And generally speaking, just being aware of the game, whatever your situation you're in, that's the almost like I don't know, 95% of the game. Like you want to get good grade. If you're not aware of how to get good grade, the chance that you're gonna get the accident is like almost like slim to none, right? You want to get good at sport. What's a game, right? Like you want to get like I don't know, good at like raising money. The game is not that nice, right? But it's how it's played, right? Same thing for research. You want to get like your lab and stuff and get good academia. It's not a fun game. It's almost not ethical to a degree how you need to pump up papers in order to get there, right? And you have to be like very social so that like your ideas get like dispersed and stuff like that. But you have to know, and then you have to like to the point that like you're able to kind of bend the game, reach whatever your objective, or just stop at some point. You're like, yo guys, it's interesting what you guys are doing, but like the way you pushed it, I think there's absolutely no value. I'm going to do this and then this other chunk, and that's it. That's my game now. And you do your stuff, and then you have your own kind of impact, and like that's it. But like most people, especially the young ones, they have no clue. They're like, but I was told I need to do this. And you're like, oh, what do you want to do, man? Like, and what is actually driving you? And for most part, like for most of it, like it's not about the grade. It's not about the jobs. It's not about the research. It's like, what are you interested in doing, really? And then you get into this deep philosophical kind of question and dilemma, and then they're like, I don't know, right? How can I know? I'm like, you can't ask me. You can't ask me this shit. You have to kind of like just meditate on it for however long, and then try to find a direction and go through it. Especially, I think, like in the current AI world where like the hype is blown up of proportion and it's like very doomy and stuff, and then people are stressed out of their mind. There's not going to be any job left whatsoever, and then people are even more lost than ever before I ever seen, right? And then they stuck and they don't do anything, right? Or like whatever they do, they feel like it's meaningless and stuff. How do you guys deal with this? Like when people are asking you this sort of stuff? What do you do?
I'm not the best person to ask this, right? Because I can really go into this sad, it's going to be the end of the world kind of point of view, right? Of course, I don't really believe it's going to be the end of the world, but it's very easy to go into this direction, right? Like,
yeah.
Usually with technologies like this, it's like the worst case and the best case are not really going to happen. Like something in the middle is going to happen. So we probably are going to lose some jobs. We're going to get some jobs. A lot of things are going to change. Or I understand that it's very easy to think that it's all going to end, because like even with the current rate of progress, it's honestly kind of scary. Like I don't know about Ludwig, but some days I'm just like what is happening, man? Like why is it working? Like why is it working so well? Like I understand it's predicting next token and like, but why is it spinning out like math proofs? Okay, it wasn't supposed to be like this. It was supposed to like giving me money and fun, and at the end of the day, like we all probably will have to adapt in one way or another, and hopefully it will be good. I don't think there is an easy answer to, oh, how do you deal with that? Like maybe there is some days that you're gonna feel worse about it, and I think it's perfectly fine. Just don't stay there. Have some azimuth and go towards it. Like before we talked about getting into the field. Try to go there, or if you don't, then you're fucked. Sorry, but that's just of how life is.
That's all.
Like, yeah, but that's how life goes. Like you don't have to have AI overlords to have this dilemma, right?
Yeah.
You can just ponder about life itself in this way. If there is no goal, like if you don't try to go towards something and you think it's all pointless, then, well, sorry to break it to you, it always has been pointless, right? Unless you make a point.
Oh, that's good, man. Oh my God, this last statement was so good. But in my case, like, because I'm in the weed of the whole thing and I'm talking to the folks that are trying to push this shit, I find it a bit lazy, like, especially the people that are just commenting on it and then, like, they don't have any, like, their hands are not in it. And they're like, this is going to scale to, like, double infinite and then we're going to get this and, like, we're going to, like, be easy to do this. I'm like, you know how much work you're just gonna take to just continue doing this shit? Like, do you know how ugly it is at the finer detail and how much duct tape we need to stop onto these half-assed machines? It's still beautiful, but like, if we want to keep doing it, there's so much work, man. And like, so how about we all try to help and make it like work and then just think about it? I think that would be better than just like feeling hopeless about it, or just commenting on the sideline and say like, it's gonna be done. And then imagine somebody talk to you about, like, imagine your PI says, oh yeah, and then he's gonna do this and then this other shit, and then like in 2 years we're gonna all this, and you're there and you're like, I have to do all of that shit and like get all of these experiments in for this to happen, right? I feel like
there is some PIs that say it. There are PIs like
I know.
So
they put their stuff on the grant and then you're like, okay, I guess I have to do it now.
Yeah, like you said, like there is some people that say it's all gonna happen like automatically, but in reality it's a lot of duct tape and a lot of like praying and God's benevolent intervention. Yeah. But there are times that it really seems to work, right?
It does. Yeah. But one area that it surprised me a lot that it still is not that working is like just a very, very long context. I'm not saying like having the model with some harness, being able, like, just fundamentally the long context within it, like having the window being like a lot of tokens and stuff. Like we just hit the wall and then we're like, oh yeah, don't look at this too much. And then we're doing other stuff, right? But then like, okay, so what's going on here, guys? I'm like, oh yeah, but we can extend it. We're just gonna like wiggle the rope, like that's fine. And like, but what's up? Well, how do we fix this? And like, there's no need to fix it because actually you can put it into a harness and like it's external now. And like, okay, so that's good. Is there other shit like this that I have to be aware of? That's like the sort of thing that I'm talking about. Like and so many people are working on this, like just this. And it's like, it is working, but not that much compared to everything else, right? So it's this element that I'm like, it's just so easy to just say like, so easy to say like magic, done. I don't have to understand anything anymore. And YOLO. My point is that if you're that stressed out, you should check out the things, right? And try to understand what's going on internally. It will put like a damper a bit, and like, okay, well, there's a lot of work involved. And if you're that interested that you're at this level, then like, go get involved, man. Like, and try to make this thing that will like yield to all of these magical things happen. And that's just a worthy pursuit on itself at this point.
I agree that there is a lot of things that seem not to work. And I was one of the people actually like speaking loudly about it. Like there is a lot of pitfalls to all the people that say it's gonna scale autonomously like to AGI. It's probably not gonna happen. Okay, it's gonna be fine. But then there's moments when I think like, okay, maybe we have to use the harness. But if harness makes it work, it becomes a philosophical question. Like, do we want an algorithm or a machine or whatever that doesn't have any problems with anything, or do we want to get there in any means necessary, right?
Yeah.
And there is a very simple problem that shows you that autoregressive architecture fails on very simple examples. One of them is like star graph, when there is a very easy way to solve it. Like you can just go backwards, and the problem of finding a path solving the star graph becomes very simple. But autoregressive models just can't do it. They just can't learn it. Like whatever you're gonna do, they will not learn it unless you add reasoning. When you add reasoning, they're gonna do some funny backtracking in the reasoning, and then you will get a correct answer in like the normal output of the LLM. But well, even though it's a fundamental problem with autoregressive models, we completely don't see it, because like we sidetrack it. Like we completely went over it with reasoning. And with context, we'll probably also somehow make it work. With harnesses, we make agents work. Then it becomes a question of like, do I want to make it work, or do I want to solve the problem of like creating the perfect mechanism?
Or just understanding it. Like there's something fundamental to understanding the shape. Like the reasoning is, I always found that like the reasoning outside was a bit wonky. And like there is some talk that like the new thing from Anthropic, I think Mythos, is like a looping transformer, which is absolutely awesome, because like 2 years ago I was like, that should be a very fucking cool idea to be able to do that and to scale it in a way that like you're able to learn the thing. And then there was a lot of hint that like that could be something that is interesting. But this is what I'm talking about. It's like if you're that anxious and you look at it, you're like, there's so many area and that to improve this stuff, and it's just so much work, man. Like it's just so much work, and there's just so much to do. So like, so just like, yeah, it's gonna go like this forever, and like keep like, yeah, just go and look at the stuff, man, and spend less time dooming about that, and like learning this thing that will be so ubiquitous and so important, right? Go ahead and learn the thing. What's your take, Ludwig?
Yeah, you guys, I think it's interesting to hear your thoughts. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, none of this matters very much. I think it's it depends on the person. What I would tell them first of all, and stuff like that. Like, I mean, it really depends on the person. If a person feels anxious about that, they have other issues. I mean, it doesn't really matter what's actually happening. They would be fucking, they'd be stressed out about like Iran right now, or like the Strait of Hormuz, whatever. Like it doesn't, I don't, this is a more like it's a person thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't also really matter if everything gets patched up and we keep scaling up and people like, the middle of the bell curve ends up happening and stuff like that. It doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't matter at all for two reasons. One is that things, I think you guys kind of both pointed to that. Yes. And especially like things take time to percolate in society. Societies are very complex. They're very like multi-layered. They're, the actual physical things, like infrastructure and organizations, like the 17,000 people village in Sweden in that prefecture is not going to like, Mythos could release tomorrow. I mean, it's not going to drastically change anything instantly. I mean, it takes a lot of time to percolate in a complex, multi-dimensional system like a society. So one is like, there's a lot more time. The permanent underclass doesn't exist. It's fucking stupid. Everybody who tells you that is fiercely specifically out to get you, and they want you depressed, and they want you, on your knees. Every single person who tells you anything on the internet that is negative or pessimistic in nature, to especially at that scale of pessimism, is specifically trying to kill you specifically and your family and everybody you love. That's what I think. The reason being that I don't want to say nothing ever happens and, like it doesn't really matter. Obviously, things do matter, and there's going to be millions of jobs displaced over time. LLMs, by the way, I mean, like they could solve every single Eldash problem on the fucking planet and start, doing non-garbage math and so none of that matters. I mean, one of the things that people forget about the fact that, by the way, I will say I have 12 different codexes right now. I have unlimited tokens this month. is on 600 iterations for
Yeah.
like a fucking thermodynamic computing library on 10 story, whatever. Like, I mean, it's like, yeah, I'm very much in the thing, right? Very much in the thing. I use them. I understand them. I've built them. I've deployed them. I've done stuff with them. But point is, it doesn't fucking matter. One fundamental thing about LLMs and what they can provide as far as value is still there's a very much a human component. I mean, the value of a mathematical proof, right? There's no value at all in the certification of a statement being true, or a theorem, or a theorem being true or false. I mean, there's none of that at all. There's a value in some sense. You can add it to an ever-growing library of statements that are true. You can use these Lego blocks with, of complete safety that you can build upon them and stuff like that. The only reason why we do anything in mathematics is for understanding. The understanding is completely innate to us. It does not matter the LLM understanding. I mean, it has no at the moment, and for the foreseeable future, it does not drive anything. It cannot fundamentally drive anything. It has no capacity to. We decide when an LLM does well based on what we think does well. That's because we matter very much in the process of what LLMs, and that they're getting better. Like we decide what looks like better because of our nature and our interests. Again, LLMs are, like there's a lot of companies. I don't want to take a tangent. I'll go back to the immediate question. There's a lot of companies who are talking about solving mathematics and solving super intelligence and stuff like that. None of that exists. You need to relax. What I would tell to people who are worried about the literal demons posting on X, telling you that there's 2 years before the firmament underclass, is to take a concrete look around you, a real look around you, and understand that the physical structure of your world is not going to change very rapidly, and it is entirely up to you if you want to be, a stress loser or not. I mean, none of that really matters. What do you care about? I mean, like for me, I have a lot of compassion for a lot of people. So, like, if millions of people are have their jobs displaced, and if there's like social problems and stuff like that sucks, I would like to help that and things like that. But also, is my family gonna be okay? Is my people gonna be okay? They're gonna be okay. Nothing's gonna happen to me. And if something happens to me, it's happening to everybody. There's gonna be a civil war or something, like, okay, well, it doesn't matter. None of that is real. It doesn't exist.
It's not useful at all. Like to think in this framework, because then you can't do anything about it, and then you're like, so why anything, right? And then you get into like this completely muddy pit that you literally dug yourself in, right? And you're like, wow, why I'm like this? Like, yeah, you did that. Just get up and let's do something. Like in this situation, like the best thing is just like, have you tried to help somebody, right?
Yes.
Have you just tried like there will be nothing to just go and there's plenty of people that need fucking help.
Go take care of children. Go take care of old people. Go
just volunteer or something, man. You go help out a bunch of lab that need like data labeling shit, right? Go to your hospital. Like there's a million things you could do with your life, right? And then they will have a positive impact with the rest of the society, which will make you feel great.
You might be worried about as a person when you hear that is much more ugly, is that you might be worried about missing the wagon. You never belong from the wagon. It is not your wagon. It was manufactured to hurt you. It doesn't matter. There's no wagon. You would be honest if you belonged on it, and you're not on it, it doesn't matter. The wagon is going nowhere anyway. It's a completely manufactured idea. That like 2 years until the permanent underclass, AGI is going to change anything. Mythos is this, cybersecurity, and like, it's a tremendous, Mythos is like 5.4 Pro, like 0.1, like none of that matters. I have 5.4 Pro since it released. It's absolutely tremendously impressive. I never thought I would live in my life where I have intelligent machines. They're intelligent. They're not human intelligence at all whatsoever. There's almost zero overlap. I mean, they have nothing to do with each other. It does not matter. People get caught up on that. I don't think it matters either because, the world is very complex. There's a lot of things to do. Turns out that like an immensely large compression of all human knowledge and the capacity to basically like run inference and like weave things together from your very large compressed latence of all of human knowledge is like super useful. The faster we can get it, the better we can get it. The more we put in harnesses, the more cool stuff happens. It is tremendously helping people in good ways. And stuff like that, but it also doesn't really matter very much. We can see that around. I mean, it doesn't really matter to my mother, I think, or it doesn't really matter to the people I buy bread from. It will matter at some point, but by that time, it will have happened so slowly. It will have happened fairly organically. I mean, it's okay, So that's what I would tell them is relax. If you're broke, go get some money. You will need it to be, regardless of what happens. I mean, it's just, you will struggle, for freedom and time without money. And then, take a hard look at yourself and figure out what is it that you want to do. I think that you talked about that, Yassine, very well. And, what you want to optimize for. And please understand that you were talking about long-term horizon planning. So that I think people struggle with that. Even me all the time. It's like, life is incredibly long. I have around 20,000
So long, man.
to live, that's a lot of fucking days. I can choose right now to optimize for what I enjoy and what I'm good at, and not enjoy for what is good for the world. And then, I can switch it up. I mean, I'm going to be around, hopefully, for a while. And as long as I do it with honesty, we will fall on its feet.
Yeah, true.
So I mean, yeah, that's what I would say to people. It's really nice.
Yeah.
Care about something more important. Yeah.
And like even in my life where I had like period where I was kind of aimless and stuff, all of the glimmer and like the thing that I look back and I was like, oh, that was worth it. It was always when I was helping people and helping someone. And then like you sometimes I forget about it, and then you meet them back and like, oh, remember you did this. And I was like, oh, maybe I don't. And then it's like, yeah, and it just helped me a lot, and this led to this, and you have an impact that is kind of ever going. And like this makes, I don't know if it's how our human brain is wired or some shit like that, but like it makes everything that happened at that time like have sense and meaning, right? Just because you help somebody else with their own stuff. You said a statement, Ludwig, that was really interesting. That there has no connection whatsoever, these decoder type of system to like human intelligence. Why do you say that? Because I agree also, right? What exactly makes you say like they have nothing going?
Like produces something different already. So empirically, you can observe that it's different. It's not the kind of intelligence that like my dog has. It's completely different. It's manufactured different. It's engineered differently. I think the substrate doesn't matter so much. I'm not a person who believes that like human intelligence is restrained to like a biological substrate, and you must have like a kind of a, well, I mean, it might be very, very hard to do in silico or with other things at the moment. And so, with biology, you get a lot of things for free that are very, very hard to reproduce because of the complexity of the systems. I mean, like, transistors are very complicated and computers are very complicated, but I mean, it's a different kind of complexity in biology, very different kind of complexity. And so you do get a lot of things for free, quote unquote, in that, biological systems are like wiring a certain way, and they have these patterns and behaviors that come out of them that are substantially more complex than even the like kind of nesting of complexity that composes them. I mean, this is like child's play. Reinforcement learning is like literally like like an infant field. I mean, it is completely trivial in every single way. There's not a single thing in reinforcement learning that's even remotely impressive compared to anything that happens in the real world. But that does not discredit reinforcement learning. It happens that like the very barbaric approach to like post training is incredibly useful in that of attack, or that vector of attack, to produce things in the world. And in this case, like I have models that are like incredibly intelligent in different ways. So yeah, I mean, this is not a good answer because it's very high level, but I think they're fundamentally different is why, and you can empirically observe it yourself. You can take a look inside also and quickly get a visceral sense that like, oh, this is not exactly obviously can't quite be do. And yet, I mean, there's overlaps in the outputs, like LLMs are, I think 5.4 Pro, like when I standard a bunch of completely garbage applied category theory, and it's correcting like my polynomial functors and like the way that I use this lemma or stuff like that. Or if I'm, building like a theorem prover kind of like a harness or for something, it's very good. It's smarter than me at times. It's smarter not because it's smarter. It's smarter because it works fundamentally differently. And there's also things that are more amenable to this kind of models. I mean, like inference scaling and stuff like that. Like it's not going to get you certain things, and it's going to get you other things. I mean, inference scaling in the case of the large problem, that was a good example. In the case of like a complex combinatoric problems, it's going to be able to like do things that would take substantially longer for humans maybe not even be capable of it. But it is different in nature, even with the overlaps. And obviously, if you took an LLM and you embodied it in the really incredibly rudimentary ways we have to embody sensors to a model, I mean, you do not get anything that even is remotely as smart as a cell. I mean, cells, a problem space and are problem solving agents, and they're very, they have a form of cognition that's fundamentally in nature different than LLM. So yeah.
Oh, that's right. And maybe Nikolai, you have some thought about it, because I have my own tinfoil hat thought about this shit. But I want to hear yours.
You can just understand the difference looking at the power consumption of the brain versus the computer, and just start from there and see that, well, we are getting quote unquote intelligence, but it's not the same intelligence as Ludwig said, right? These systems are intelligent in a lot of the use cases that we specifically, like software engineers, mathematicians, physics professors, whatever, use them for, but it's not exactly the same kind of intelligence as humans have. Depending on which axis we want to go with, there is a lot still to do, and like at one point we talked about neuromorphic cheats. Great idea. Go there. Do it. Low energy consumption on devices, on edge, whatever. Great. But we are not anywhere there yet, basically. Like we don't understand the brain. We don't understand how to do LLMs on neuromorphic chips well at all. Yeah, like it's a whole another story, right?
And my take on this is that, like, if you spend enough time like understanding neurons, but not at the superficial level, like, oh, okay, input output good, synapses good, but you actually look at them, because like you can spend your whole life studying just a certain subset of neurons, and you never touch the cerebellum ever. You don't even know what the fuck it look like, right? And you still will have every year 45 different discoveries that you're making. And it depends on which level. Like there's some researcher that they're just looking at ion gated channel. This is the only thing they're looking at. They can't even look at all of them, right? And it's like one subset on this, in this specific way. And like, oh, there's other guys that are just looking at synapses and they're like, what the fuck is going, it's crazy, right? And like the amount of complexity, right, is like unfathomably high. Like if you just look at that one neuron, a human neuron, compared, let's say, to a tardigrade neuron, which is that like 3 of them or something like that, or a C. elegans neuron, it's like, it's night and day. Like it's not even the same category. It doesn't even do the same computation. And like the thing within itself, if you really dive deep into it, right, and you look how it functions, it's absolutely bonkers. Like it has machines. It is like transporting shit, and like it's moving its stuff, and it has to be fed, and it's like interacting and signaling all the time, right? And it decide like with this histamine what you need to like express or not, depending on like what's going on. And all of this is going, right? And it could die, but it's trying like to actually like not use too much energy and stuff. And if you receive a signal, there's the amount of complexity within a singular neuron, and the amount of like different level of computation it's doing at like its own level, right? It's like a mechanical level, the level with the different connection, the level with the substrate around. And then you take like population of them and they start to behave in like emerging kind of type of properties. I don't know, like I feel like trying to replicate that in silica, or like at this point, like why would you even want to replicate that, right? You want to replicate like the system completely what it is doing, but it's so much of a crude approximation, and you see the crack and stuff that like, I don't know, in my view, like these things are super useful and then they're super great, right? But like trying to kind of cartoonishly say like it's better than a human, like we're done and all this stuff. I feel like it's like almost plain ignorance about what's going on at this level.
Ignorance, yeah, it's ignorance. Is I think like, you know, it's partly ignorance in a understandable way, and it's partly like almost like nearly malicious ignorance. I mean, there's this marketing vehicle in the ignorance. I mean, like you're kind of, you know, playing dumb to like, you know, very obvious facts. I want to say, by the way, neurons completely agree with you. Non-neuronal intelligence, like
True.
like, you know, is I mean,
A cell on its own is super smart.
cell on its own, and you know, like your liver as a system, the nesting of different kinds of intelligence there, and then, you know, obviously the liver is in a larger system and a larger system. I mean, it's absolutely absurd.
The white cells, man, they go and hunt. It's not even part of like this, like your central nervous, like it just go and hunt and then make sure that everything is all good. Like and this is interacting with the rest of the stuff. And like 50% and more of the mass in your brain is not even like computing neuron. It's just like astrocyte trying to make this shit whole. And like the amount of complexity that we're talking about is you can't just cartoonishly like say like this is solved this number of parameters versus like fucking llama 4 whatever behemoth they had, like okay we got it. Like no man, we're not even close. It's not even at the same
mental
ballpark.
like kind of ugliness in the Kardashev kind of guys, like scaling, kind of guys is like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the idea that you can, I mean, there is something brute forcible about the intelligence output we're getting from LLMs. I don't think this is the architecture that will get us to anything close to like what they think it will, maybe, but okay. But certainly, like, I mean, there's real value in scaling this up and like basically like brute forcing more. I mean, for sure.
Yes.
But the idea and the like playing ignorance on the fact that like, you take ion channels, you take a single cell, you take tissue, you take an organ, you take an organism, you take a swarm of organisms. The Matryoshka dolls of very complex systems, their interaction modes, and the different kind of computations that are done, but also the fact that like many things like ion channels actually compute at different levels of that hierarchy. They are used for 2 things, 3 things, 4 things at once in different ways. I mean, this is the idea that you would get. Can you brute force computationally with an LLM? Up to a cat or something, maybe, or a human, maybe. That doesn't really matter. It's irrelevant. There's a lot of things that are brute forceable within the bounds of like reasonable amount of space and time. Like sure, but definitely, when I hear about like like the misuse of intelligence and how it's discussed, it's really annoying. I think it doesn't really make much sense to me. It's disrespectful to like I think like the intelligences that are out there. It's not very fruitful for research. It's not a very fruitful look for research. If you looked at the collective intelligence of cells and what they can do, and you take the kind of like mentalistic approach that they are like cognitive agent to some extent, and because you can look at them in the way that you can like experiment with them in a neat way. I mean, there's a lot to learn. Is my point. All up and down the hierarchy or like, metro pedal nesting of like systems. And I think the reductionist, like just really ugly computer science guy approach, while it is incredibly necessary, by the way, and people should work on LLMs and all that stuff, like, obviously, I mean, I need them. You know what I mean? So, well, but like, there are some people who are kind of too much on the wagon. There's a bunch of 23-year-old kids right now, who are in SF, they're in Patrol Hills, and they think they are, building a god intelligence in the machine, and that they are like, fundamentally at the, in the root of the Project Manhattan of like the most important thing that humanity has ever done. I mean, that I do not like that. I think you can have wonderful things that are truly mind-blowing that nobody in the world could have. Maybe certainly people are foreseeing some of these things, but like, certainly, I mean, it's surprising to everybody, and not sell it and package it wrongly and be ignorant to other things. The only reason why it doesn't happen is like a game theoretic, like, just doesn't sell as well. And you do want like, the largest amount of mind space possible. You want to, and this is exactly the kind of people who tell you, 2 years until the permanent underclass kind of thing, like it's all kind of similar. I think anyway, I don't know if that makes enough sense, but yeah.
It does make sense. And you touched on a good point, because like I remember that I think it was in a Dwarkesh podcast or something like that, and then Ilya was just like he was just talking to Dwarkesh and like looking in the distance, and he was like, do you get like that this is real and stuff? And he's like, what? And he's like, do you think that LLM just works? And the guy is like one of the guy that made it work, right? They just like, come fuck. And then Dwarkesh is continuing after that with the interview, which I find is a good, I don't know, just no disrespect, Dwarkesh, keep on doing whatever you're doing, but it's interesting because you tend to go to this extreme, but then you have this guy, right, that is doing the stuff, and he's like, wow, it works, fantastic, right? Like he's the guy that's supposed to have ideas and stuff like that, and like push the stuff forward, and he's like, yeah man, there's still a lot of work to do, and all this. Yeah, but he was UFT, and then he was also working with Jeff Hinton, if I remember correctly, which is really into neuroscience. So maybe he got that from him, and he understood a bit more of the of this. Do you think there's any usefulness in trying to bring this back more into like the neuroscience route that it has, versus saying that like, and try to have this cut and say like, oh, this is messy, we don't care about that, we're just gonna do this? Do you think there's any usefulness in deep learning in general to kind of go back to this more grounded in the real substrate that we have for AGI?
Maybe. What I think about it is that, for one, bit a lesson, of course, but two, like, we have to look for analogies, like in one way or another. Some analogies may be good, some analogies may be bad. There is a reason why brain works the way it works, and that it works this well. And of course, we can't replicate the complexity. We can't replicate the system. Right now, we don't even know how to do it, so it's not like we can, but at least look for maybe higher order mechanisms, look for the learning mechanisms. For now, I am not really even sure how one would pursue it, because I kind of diverged from neuroscience, thankfully, because it's a clusterfuck, honestly. By the way, a tangent. I saw this.
By the way, I love neuroscience, and you're right, it's a clusterfuck.
Yeah. I also love it, but like whenever I learn some stuff, it's like it's not really about neuroscience only. It's like neuroscience and medicine and biology. It's like whenever I learn about some new results, I'm like, but wait, I remember similar thing from a year ago, and the results were completely different. And then I look for it, and there is like 3 different papers saying 3 different things. Like this one review on, I think it was some dietitian looking at whether food was good for you, like certain types of food. And like he looked at many different studies, and all the studies were contradicting each other. And
crazy.
You could make that ice cream is good for you and stuff like this. And like, how do you make sense of it? Like in medicine, there's nothing set in stone. It's like a bunch of techniques that result in good outcomes, right? For now, from what we understand, they result in good outcomes. Even if there is a new technique to, I don't know, treat your knee or whatever, to do a surgery, like we have zero understanding, an idea or a projection, simulation of whatever that's going to happen 20 years down the line. Like we will learn it when we get there, when the patient gets there, right? So in this sense, like we are extremely lucky to be working with computers and like math or whatever, because if we make a mistake, somebody can quickly, more or less quickly verify it, and it's gonna be fine. But well, good luck if you do it in medicine, right? Like you have to be like, well, this seems to work, and hopefully it's not gonna kill anybody like in 10 years or 5 years or whatever.
And just the baseline knowledge to do something is crazy. Like because in the lab that I was in, that was doing like memory research for like a special, I was deep into like a very specific problem. I was trying to check if like a receptor like that binded with ubiquitin that was needed for memory formation had like a different like sub protein that we had to kind of ablate to see which one was important. But it was crazy because the purpose of this research was that when you knock out a gene in a rat, when they're born, they're normal, and then you knock it out, they cannot learn anymore, right? And then people were like, we found it and whatever, and then this is this gene and stuff. When you do it before they're born, they can learn now. So people were like, what the fuck then? And then when you dig into it, like you realize that there's like backup gene for that thing that can get expressed if this ever get knocked out, because learning is so fundamental. So then the field open up like a whole bunch of complexity about like how the memory is formed. And then you have this other gene that you have to now take it to. And what happened if you knock this out also, if you do a double knockout now? And what do you do like a triple knockout? But like it's a real thing, so you have to kind of go ahead and cross a bunch of rats together, right? You wait 3 fucking months, and then like it's not even there yet, and you have to redo it. It's crazy complex, man. And then once you try to understand the mechanism behind, it's not like you're looking at the thing with your eyes and then you can go in and stepwise. The amount of things that are happening at the same time is absolutely insane.
Yeah, it's the same story with like how benzodiazepines bind to neurons, right? Like you have receptors looking exactly the same, but if you bind to a wrong receptor, it's not gonna work. right? You have to bind to this one specifically. And why? Well, we don't really know what it results. It results in the thing that it results in. Well, we don't really know, but it seems to work. It's the same things for like methamphetamines for ADHD or whatever. Like, well, this seems to work. Thank you. Let's get to next.
Let's move on.
Yeah, and we kind of have to move on, right? Because
man.
kind of dwell. Like, you have so many researchers that dwell on one single problem for their entire lives, and
Literally,
there is nothing wrong with that. But like, just think about it, like, for a second. Like, it's not gonna hit you as hard when you're 18 and listening to this, but when you are 30 or 40, and you really understand what it means to have like your life passing by, at least a little bit by now. Like, somebody spent their entire lives working on a singular problem. Like, it's mind-boggling, right?
it's crazy. A lot of respect, by the way. Like anyone that is like doing these type of research.
But just the price to pay, like,
It's crazy.
entire life, and sometimes you don't even solve it. It's like,
But you know, there was one guy in this lab, this memory lab. I was doing a presentation about like he wanted me to do a presentation about the problem, and I was doing it, and like it was my first presentation in front of the labs, and I was like, hey, this is what we're doing, and I made like a little slide about like why we're doing this, and I read all of their paper to show like why it's important, and then like he's like, oh, this is good. By the way, you made the mistake in this figure. You just fix it for next time. And by the way, this is wrong. Like, this is not why I decided to do this. And I was like, oh, okay. Why? And he's like, because I like to understand how learning works. That's fucking it. There was not like, I'm not trying to help a bunch of folks, or like, I like to do this shit and I'm getting paid to do it and I have money and we're doing it in my lab, which then I understood why he was still looking at these pathway and stuff. It was literally intrinsically fun for him to understand why if we knock this protein, now this other one works. And then like he just liked that stuff. And like you can see it maybe as selfish and stuff like that. But to be honest, that, in my view, like that was one of the most beautiful way to live your life. You're the byproduct of what you like to do is helping other people. And you don't care about that because you're doing what you love for yourself, right? Anyway, it was cool.
So I didn't want to for my previous statement to be negative. Like, when I mentioned somebody working on one problem for their whole life, it's not like I think it's stupid or whatever. It's just like it's an insane amount of work and dedication and whatever. Like, it's hard to even imagine. But I just want to show the scale of like problems in those biology-inspired sciences, and that it's like really hard, like, and we don't understand any of it. So if anybody tells you like this is the same kind of intelligence, or we don't have to look at human intelligence or human brain or human nervous system to replicate the intelligence, you can discard it in an instant because there is zero understanding. So we can't really say anything like this.
Yes.
Like, there's this startup, I think BrainX. It was long understood that after the brain dies, like, you can't bring it back to any like physiological function, but they came up with a device, even though the whole field was saying, what you're doing is stupid, like it's not gonna work, like why are you doing this? You have some fame that will go away because you're doing this shit, and everybody discarded it. But they basically brought back a pig's brain back to like physiological life. So there was no electrophysiological, like this kind of what we would call conscious electrical signal in the brain. Yeah. But the physiological function, like the blood flow and all of this, was brought back. And now I think they also work. I'm not sure if they showed that it worked on humans, but they're working on it and they want to speed up the process of drug production with it. So this is really interesting. And like this only shows you that this field, like, it doesn't understand what can or cannot be done, and there's a lot of area to still explore.
Cool. Ludwig, do you want to add something on this?
Yeah, I think I'm of the same mind as Nikolai about bringing, should we bring back, port more of neuroscience into, like, I mean, neuroscience comes with a lot of baggage. The mechanistic approach of biology in general is fundamentally flawed, I think. And I think neuroscience, maybe not so much cognitive sciences in general. I think it would be great, but with a teleological frame, with a more like the mechanistic way to look. I mean, we just do not have the capacity to mechanistically interpret these things, and we cannot. We don't have tools. What we have is I mean, the explanations we give after the fact are, first of all, we do things in that field, I think, with the very mechanistic approach. We change things. I mean, your blade, the specific thing, right? Like you kind of mess with this stuff, and I think that's a valuable approach. I don't know how much bringing that into machine learning is a completely different thing. If you take a different mentalistic approach of like cognition and diverse intelligence and stuff like that, and you kind of take again a much more like teleological thing where like you're kind of looking at like what purpose does it frame it in that way. I think there's a lot of things to learn. There's a lot of things to learn. It's at a different level of abstraction. It works. It carries better. Certainly, mechanical things on computers are much better. I mean, it's like, I mean, if you're a neuroscientist and like you're into LLMs, it's like a dream. You have like a little made up brain that's like, I mean, it's not really a brain, but it's, you can open it up. You can do anything you want at any time. So yeah, I mean, the short answer is yes, I think there's some value, maybe not neuroscience, but cognitive sciences in general. I think neuroscience as a whole comes with baggage, and there's a lot of flaws. There's also like very poor explanatory models because they're looking at things like funnily in the wrong way, like mechanistic interventions, and like trying to mechanistically interpret things is just not really a thing that makes too much sense. I mean, it can make sense in some ways, in some trivial, smaller, localized ways, maybe. But even then, I mean, it's, you're not going to get a mechanical understanding of anything in neuroscience, I think, to some extent. I mean, in some degrees of interpretation, you could kind of maybe, but However, yes, bringing more cognitive sciences and trying to understand from like the incredibly varied range of what we could consider cognition, I think that would be very useful. What Nikolai said, like, as far as like looking at a higher level, like for learning mechanisms and stuff, like sure, but honestly, it's not so much the empirical data and the interpretations of them and things like that. It's more like a mindset, I think. And that mindset is necessary even in biology and neuroscience and cognitive sciences in general. I mean, they do too much mechanistic things, and they need to frame things more teleologically, I think. And so both of them could learn from each other to some extent. Well, machine learning could learn from the people in these fields who are doing it in a way that is amenable to being transferred, so that would be my take. Certainly, if I was interested in building smarter models or models that learn in different ways, or that learn in ways that are, you're talking about context windows and things like that. So like, we're talking about like fundamentally different architectures, than transformers, up to some extent of like what we can do with the foreseeable advancements in hardware and optimizations. I would not be working on that. Yeah, I would not be working on transformers whatsoever. I would be working on transformers if I was interested in the research of transformers and then their potential applied uses and scaling that up. For sure. If I was interested in like building a smart, I mean, I would rather even go with Lecan or like, the JPA world and stuff like that. Even then, there's at least this different approach. And there are some interesting things in these approaches. But if I was to learn from this kind of like biological fields, I would be looking at things completely different. Yeah, I would not be doing any of the architectures. Yeah.
Same. Cool. This is fantastic, guys. And there's just one last question, just so that we close with maybe something pragmatic. Let's say like, with your current understanding of like what everything is going on and stuff, like in like 5 years from now, right? Like taking what we're seeing and knowing right now, what is like one skill that you will be glad to have improved in some shape or form?
My capacity to think, in general, like mathematical thinking. Yeah, I think, I mean, in 5 years, I'm already very glad of the last few years of like, just like my capacity to reason, my capacity to think. I think I've spent a lot of time trying to understand like, kind of like the modes of interpretations and the levels of reflection that, so that I can frame everything up in these like high dimensional ways of like, because nothing is exactly what it is unless you take that, angle to it and stuff like that. So I think math especially, I mean, it was pure mathematics was incredibly useful for me. Discovering Grothendieck and like, kind of going through his journey of like the notion of space and, all the way to, topos theory and all the things that he, that he thought. It taught me not so much about topos theory. I don't think I understand it very much. But it taught me about like, how to think about things, I think, better. I mean, I think I always had, again, some things like that a little bit in my own ways, very much smaller than him, of course, but like, it it's giving weekly. I mean, I'm really, things are starting to coalesce for me. I'm starting to be able to like kind of jump between rooms a bit better. I'm starting to notice like shared structures between them better. I'm also like, I have a quick kind of self feedback loop on like, okay, well, I'm saying this, but it's at this angle, and it's at, it's with this framing, and you're right. And so, I think that's what I'll be glad for in 5 years is just, just raw capacity to reason, but with a lot of, hopefully a lot of grace, like a lot of, a massive step back from like the reach of my statements, just really framing them in general. Yeah.
Cool. Like, this is a very good answer. Michelet?
I don't think I have a single skill that I want to work on. Like whatever I have going on right now and whatever skills I have right now, I just want them not to leave me, like it's getting me holding on to that. Like I'm more or less happy with the place I'm in right now. Like, of course, like there's things that you dream about and like places you want to be and stuff, but honestly, I'm in a great place. Like today I was by the lake, sunny. How I visit it, I just want to keep doing it, like by any means necessary. If the world is going to shit, then well, and if there is the permanent underclass, then I want my stock portfolio to do even better than it's doing now. But other than that, there's not really any issue with skills. Like, of course, like I will always have the math imposter syndrome. Like it's never going to leave me. Like I always feel like I have fundamental gaps in my math education. But I think, okay, that may be a hot take, but I really think that at some point whether you want to do frontier engineering or frontier research, can have gaps in your math education.
Yeah.
They're just gonna fill themselves. Like if you really put in the work and you do good work and you try, it's gonna be fine. Like just have the general understanding of math. Like, of course, like you can be doing middle school math and try to do frontier research. But even if you have huge gaps in certain areas of university math or grad school math or whatever, I think it's going to be perfectly fine. Like, even though I already saw most of the math from the things that I'm working on currently in classes, like I don't really connect it with the stuff that I've seen in classes. I have to redirect stuff again and I have to connect stuff again. But it's just about having those notions, like you can shuffle stuff around. Then you just chat back and forth with GPT how to understand it, because like if you bother anyone with so many questions, they will probably kill you. So thankfully LLMs are there. Yeah, so I just hope this curiosity and this will to discover and explore will not leave me, and it's probably gonna be fun.
That's beautiful, man. Like it's really, really well said, because you already have it, right? So if you can keep doing it, you're gonna do a lot of good stuff. And like I agree, like that whenever you have gap, even math or whatever it is, like if you're working on a good problem, the problem will teach you, and that's good enough. That's the best teacher you can have, because he's not gonna judge. You can go any try you want, and then like you're gonna at some point you're gonna know when it's gonna be solved, and then that's good enough. So folks, thanks a lot for spending 2 hours and 30 minutes of your life with me. That was absolutely amazing. Yeah, thank you very much for all this knowledge.